Hey, what's up YouTube? In today's video, I'm going to be giving expert level analysis of the #1 HoggyQ player in the world. I'm going to be covering high level matchup strategy and micro interactions, basically explaining why he does certain plays. This is not a guide for those who are new to Hog or HoggyQ and is mainly aimed at those who are intermediate to advanced level players. There are a lot of tough and really important matchups covered in this video, so make sure you watch all the way to the end. I've left all the timestamps for each matchup in the description down below for you guys to refer back to, and by the end of the video you will be a better HoggyQ player. So in this matchup we're watching Mo play against Evo Goblin Giant, Evo Pekka. This is a pretty good matchup for HoggyQ, all things considered, but it is quite easy to lose if you overcommit, and there's definitely quite a lot of strategy that goes into being able to play this matchup, especially given the opponent has arrows. So mainly what he does is he's trying to get one hog hit at a time, and he's not trying to be overly aggressive. You'll never see him go for like a Mighty Miner hog at the bridge or anything like that. He's just cycling his spells, he's not cycling his cards, he's just sort of waiting. Now he'll go for his cannon, and he's sort of just setting up, because HoggyQ does really well defending. It's really actually solid defending against this Pekka deck, with the guards for the Pekka and Mighty Miner for the Goblin Giant. But you can very easily lose if you don't have elixir to deploy all these cards. The Ice Spirit unfortunately kind of pushed away the Goblin Giant from the cannon, so a bit of a misplay. But overall, he defends really well, and most of the time you're going to get your damage on the counter push. You need to fully defend when they have both their Evos in cycle. So if you're keeping track of their Evos, that's when you'll know you have to fully defend. He's going to go for a hog pretty soon, knowing the opponent has Fisherman in cycle. And watch, he knows the opponent has skeletons, so he prediction earthquakes these skellies just to get the hog to get one hit on the tower. Then he goes for like prediction, here we go, Ice Spirit and then Evo Firecracker, just to get crazy damage. Logs as well, just so that the Fisherman doesn't pull it in. And now that he's got his damage, he just sets up for defense. Opponent goes for this Goblin Giant, so he's going to try and Mighty Miner to defend. You're going to see him go for a Firecracker on the inside in just a second here. The reason he does that is so that it guarantees at least one of the Firecracker pellets will hit the Bomber, so that when he logs it will then die. You can kind of see how he's deconstructing Ice Spirit just to finish off the Fisherman, logging everything back. He will decide here just to go for his Mighty Miner. He tanks for everything. It's the safest play because his opponent has arrows, and if he goes for like guards, kind of screwed. He is down damage, but the thing is he's going to counter push, so being down damage isn't really a problem. Goes for guards, goes for hog. Opponent goes for lightning, but the guards stay alive. Guard's going to get, hog gets some hit, guard gets some hits, and you can kind of see how he's sort of controlling the tempo of the gameplay. He's not being overly aggressive, he's just waiting, defending. He is being aggressive with his firecrackers, and I've said this before in my previous videos, but when your opponent has arrows in their deck, you need to be very aggressive with firecrackers, because they're going to arrow anyway. There's no point cycling in the back. Now he's in cycle range, and this is just a really, this is just called discipline. Knowing you shouldn't be cycling hogs now, you're in spell cycle range, just spell cycle and defend. This game is basically over. We got one more defense. You see how we switched up the cannon spot? Previously the cannon didn't pull the Goblin Giants. This time he recognizes that and plays it up one tile higher. Now he just needs to EQ cycle, log, and that's GG's. Really nice and well controlled first game here by Mo. This next matchup that I'm going to be deconstructing is Mo playing against Egiant. They're running Golden Knight, Cannon, Tornado alongside the rest of the normal Egiant cards. From a macro level and a game strategy level, both sides have their strengths and weaknesses. HoggyQ's strength is that the Firecracker is kind of your win condition, because mainly they have no good way of consistently killing your Firecracker. Barb Barrel is pretty good, but you can catch Barb Barrels, and everything else, if they go Lightning, that's a negative trade. The one strength, and actually this is the thing that I see HoggyQ players doing wrong the most, is that the win condition for the HoggyQ player is actually not really your hog. You're not going to be able to break through. It's usually EQ cycling and using your Firecracker. And from the E-Giant side, what I think most HoggyQ players don't realize is that the E-Giant player is trying to win by cycling lightnings and just applying enough pressure that your Earthquake won't keep up with their lightning, and they'll get value and force you to overspend on defense. You have 3 card cycle, you have cannon, you have guard, you have firecracker. That Egiant is likely never going to get damage if you're like half decent at defending. What is going to happen is that they get you in a bad cycle. You're forced to overspend loads defending like an E-Giant, or maybe even 2 E-Giants. Then they lightning in the middle of that, and you can't defend. That's basically how they win. So in this matchup, you're going to watch him really do a great job of protecting his firecrackers, and we're about to see a good example of that here. So he goes for his Mighty Miner. He knows his opponent has Bar Barrel in cycle, so he pops the Mighty Miner ability right now, catches the Bar Barrel. Beautiful play. The opponent was not expecting it. Mighty Miner deals with the Knight, and then Mo goes for a Hog with this. He Earthquakes, Prediction Earthquake onto the cannon, and now the opponent is forced to NATO, which then means all of that sequence was just for his firecracker to get 1 hit. It seems like a lot of work for 1 firecracker hit, but honestly, it's the small margins in this matchup that win you the game. He goes for his guards at the bridge. See, another really good reason why he's going guards at the bridge is actually to get the Bar Barrel out of cycle. If the Bar Barrel is out of cycle, then he can freely go for a Hog and then Mighty Miner, and then, Firecracker at the bridge. That's an underrated play that I think most people don't realize, is that you can bait out the Bar Barrel so that you can go Firecracker at the bridge. Here, again, he's just cycling his cards, gets to his Evo Firecracker, which is going to carry this defense. You see how he went for the Hog? The opponent had 7 Elixir when he went for the Hog. If the opponent had lightninged his Firecracker, he would not have been able to defend that Hog. So it was a really, really smart Hog. The opponent is very good as well. I mean, we are talking top 100 ladder here. So the opponent smartly defends first and then lightnings. But you can see how Mo is in the deficit. You know, he's going to do his best. Amazing cannon, like really good cannon, just to get everything out, force the opponent to Bar Barrel, and really nice Earthquake. Can he sneak a Hog in for 1 hit? Yes, he can. Like, really, really good Hog. Basically, that Hog only got to the tower though because of that cannon that he played. It forced out so much Elixir. Another Hog doesn't get to the tower, but he's slowly applying pressure, and you can see how he already is back to another Firecracker. Like I said, the way you win this matchup is just by stacking Firecrackers. He's also going opposite lane. You cannot go same lane in this matchup. If you try going same lane, they're just going to consistently lightning cycle you, and you will never get damage. They're just going to stack troops, and you're just going to be screwed. A lot of this matchup is about initiative, like how much of the matchup are you defending as opposed to attacking. If you're defending for the whole thing, you're probably just going to lose. If you're attacking, if you manage to get to a point where you can attack, like you can see how aggressive he's constantly going for these Hogs, just being on the offensive, because if you go too defensive and just try and defend, they are just going to spell cycle you. You can see how the opponent is still cycling defense. He's not managed to get an E-Giant down. He's still playing cards in the wrong lane that he doesn't want, just because Mo has caught him in this really bad cycle. Another Hog, opponent has to use his Nado. He's just constantly getting Earthquake cycle. The whole time he's Earthquake cycling. Another Hog, just to stop the Golden Knight from dashing onto the Firecracker. Evo Firecracker stays alive. Like I said, the opponent cannot deal with these Firecrackers. Gets lightning value, but it's too little too late. Again, another Hog, another Earthquake. Just keep the pressure up. Log, Earthquake, going for Hogs. He's only, like you can see, he's spamming this left lane. The whole reason he's spamming is just to force the opponent to use Elixir so he can't lightning, like get to 2 lightnings. Gets another Earthquake down. Opponent will get a lightning off, but he's applied so much pressure throughout the game that opponent can't spell cycle him. Actually an insanely well played game, almost no mistakes. So yeah, a lot to learn from. Before we go on to watching Mo absolutely destroy Lavaloon, I just want to ask you guys to quickly like and sub. It does help me out, it helps the channel out, and helps me continue making these kind of videos. So, cycles log, cycles guards at the bridge, kind of just standard plays. I mean, I'm sure he probably at this level already knows what deck his opponent's playing, but that doesn't really affect too much, like how he actually plays the game. Goes for a Firecracker for the guards, and then opponent fireballs. So off Zap and Fireball, he now knows what variant the opponent is playing. He's playing the version without Cage. He goes really, really aggressive with Hog Mighty Miner, mainly because the opponent doesn't have guards in cycle. Pops the ability. He probably could have taken the whole tower, but you see how he waited and popped the ability. It was quite smart of the opponent not to go for his Valkyrie directly. He sort of had to let that Mighty Miner get all that damage. And you're going to see how he goes for a really nice set of guards. If you guys didn't know, you can make the Valkyrie only hit one guard at a time. If you know, like, let the guards run up to the Valkyrie. Small interaction, but that means he does get some damage on the left. He goes for a Firecracker in the back right, and then immediately goes for Mighty Miner at the bridge. Opponent only has guards in cycle, so he goes for a log, and then also the ability. Look at that, perfect. Opponent is not able to deal with the Firecracker, like he has no elixir, and so the Firecracker is just freely defending the Lava Hound. He goes for these Skelly Drags and Loon. Ice Spirit will deal with it. Cannon up high just to buy time for him to get to another Firecracker. Now pay attention to the elixir. They both have 4 elixir. Opponent is going to Fireball, and then Mo realizes he has no elixir, goes for a Hog. Opponent does not have any elixir. Now as soon as the opponent has elixir, now he has enough for an Inferno Dragon. He goes for guards at the opposite lane. I mean, this is just insanely beautiful gameplay. And this isn't even micro. This is not like micro skills. This is all game strategy. He's just absolutely mastered cycle and understanding how you beat these lava matchups. It's all about applying pressure based on their card cycle. So counting cards is like vitally important. He went for a Mighty Miner to kite back the Inferno Dragon. Opponent goes for a Valk, which just gets melted and then just gives up, because this is all but over. I mean, like, actually a stupidly well. I mean, beating a Lava Hound player top 100 like this is just, it's beautiful to see. A lot to learn, a lot of macro strategy used. Next up, we've got Mo playing against Giant Beatdown. This is a pretty decent matchup for Hoggy Q, but there's a lot that takes to mastering this matchup in order to make it look easy. In general, it's basically about knowing how to defend, like a rock solid defense, and then always getting just one hog hit at a time. Also knowing what their cycle is. So in this deck he has Lumberjack and he has Prince. They're like the 2 main ways of dealing with hog. I mean, they also have Mega Minion. Basically they have all of these kind of cards that are single hit but do a lot of damage. All 3, Lumberjack, Mega Minion, Prince, they're all kind of that same type, which usually means if you go for a hog you'll get 1 hit. But then you have to deal with the counter push. So here he goes for a hogs to stop the opponent going for a giant in front of that Prince. Gets quite a bit of nice damage. Guards are like so nice in this matchup. Opponent has Zap, which is basically useless since he's not running skeletons. Goes for a Mighty Miner in front of the Firecracker because Prince is out of cycle. Has to go for... He also knows the opponent is going to go for King Tower. Look at that. Ice Spirit, beautiful. Log, beautiful. Firecracker, beautiful. Like, that whole thing was just insane. He went for the Ice Spirit knowing the opponent has to go for a Bomber, because he doesn't have Mega Minion. He has to go for a Bomber onto the Firecracker. So the Ice Spirit puts it in log range. The main way you defend against these massive giant Prince pushes is using your Mighty Miner on the giant and kind of just like delaying everything else. The biggest problem you'll face is if you let your Mighty Miner die too quickly to the Prince, like dashing. So you'll see a lot of the time, that was a nice prediction by the opponent. But a lot of the times you'll see that you either use guards or you use a really well-timed Ice Spirit. Nice Mighty Miner ability as well. Use guards or you use a really nicely timed Ice Spirit to stun and like stop the Prince from charging onto the Mighty Miner, just so that your Mighty Miner can like charge onto the giant. Also for the support troops, like usually as soon as your Mighty Miner has killed the giant, you can pop the bomb, especially if it's in the middle. Really nice hog timing there, by the way. You can pop the bomb just to hit the Mega Minion and the Prince. So here you're going to see he goes for a Firecracker, obviously, and then goes for this really nice Ice Spirit, like I just said. Beautifully timed Ice Spirit, just to keep that Mighty Miner long and like alive, just that extra little bit longer. Log gets 2 cannons down. You always want to go for your guards like kind of up high just to keep them away from your cannon and your tower. And I mean, this is like, he's basically taken no damage. Constantly cycling Firecrackers. The opponent does have arrows, but he can't keep up with your cycle. Nice, it was kind of lucky the Firecracker hit the bomber, so a log will take it out. Again, it's basically just knowing which cards counter which of his cards. Your guards counter Prince, Mighty Miner, and Cannon counter the Giant. Your Firecracker counters the Mega Minion and the Bomber. You can also use the Mega Minion in the middle to kite and fully counter a lumberjack. If you just know that, I mean, you're pretty much good. Prince is out of cycle, so he goes for a beautiful hog in the middle of the defense whilst everything's being distracted, gets a hog hit. And I mean, there's not really anything else he needs to do other than just defend. He'll go for a firecracker in the back. That's basically always the first play you do, is firecracker in the back. Then you go for cannon, then you'll go for something in the middle. In this case, you see how he goes for guards again? Just tank for his mighty miner and basically stop the prince charge and the lumberjack. That's basically just a template of how you defend this. It's constantly, you go for a hog after you defended, and then you go for this mighty miner and guards. The next matchup that I'm going to be covering is Miner Poison. And Miner Poison is a completely opposite matchup to the one we just covered, because it mainly focuses around micro plays and around who has the better micro interactions. So again, if you look at and like analyze the Miner Poison deck, technically they don't really have a good way of killing your firecrackers. You know, Log doesn't fully kill it, they'd have to go for a poison, but you also have to recard cycle. So your goal isn't actually to try and stack firecrackers, you won't be able to, but it's to protect them, and that's really important, and you're going to see that throughout this matchup. Another thing is that you have to keep track of their evos, because they're both pretty brutal. Evo Bats is probably the tougher Evo to deal with. You can use your Evo Cannon, but a lot of the times they'll go for a miner to try and snipe or predict where you'll play your firecracker, and then the Evo Bats will just go nuts. So making sure you keep track of the Evo Bats, and you're constantly making sure that you're applying pressure at the same time, so you never let them just get a bunch of Miner Poisons off. Wall breakers aren't too hard to deal with, you usually just go for a cannon to defend them. But Evo wall breakers get really tricky, because a lot of the times you will have to use like different ways of defending. You can go for Ice Spirit, Firecracker, things like that, because they won't just go for Evo wall breakers at the bridge. They'll probably play it like behind the knight or something. So opponent is going in aggressive. Generally you want to go opposite lane, but if you have a damage lead already, like you're already a 700 in the right lane, there's not really any point switching. It's going to be tough. So he's going to keep going, he's going to keep cycling his earthquakes, and this is just a battle of chip. So both of you are trying to chip, and it's whoever has cleaner defense. So here you can see he does take some damage. It wasn't the best, but he does get a really, really nice Evo Cannon off. Like perfect timing. More or less equal in damage and equal in elixir, so it's a pretty close game, and that's usually how this matchup goes. Mighty Miner, he cycles in the back to get 3 card cycle, and then guards up top. Just again, you cannot let the spear goblins connect onto your tower. Here come the Evo Bats, but you see the opponent predicts the firecracker, but Mo manages to protect it and like delay enough so that a Mighty Miner can just kite it. That's kind of what I mean. You'll see throughout the matchup just how much he protects, how much he manages to protect his firecrackers. Goes for a hog, goes for an earthquake, firecracker. In this matchup, you don't look at that. Beautiful, beautiful protect. And even though he logs, firecracker's still alive. You will notice a lot of the time that he's not playing his firecracker at the bridge. Look at that. Perfect hog, great damage. He doesn't play his firecracker at the bridge because it makes it really easy to snipe, but he also doesn't play it in the back where his opponent can poison it. So often he'll be playing it somewhere in the middle of the arena. In order to mitigate minor damage, you most of the time want to be saving your Ice Spirit to reset and then play Mighty Miner or Guard or Cannon or whatever. But keep that Ice Spirit in cycle and don't just randomly cycle it. Don't waste it. You can see here, Firecracker, he's not using his ability, he's just getting 3 card cycle down and applying loads of hog pressure. Gets a nice cannon off at the bridge, and he's up 1,000, but he just has to keep up the pressure. The second, if he starts trying to play defensive and like cycling earthquakes, he's just going to lose. That's why he's not cycling earthquakes, he's constantly going for hogs, going for firecrackers. Like, really nice firecracker. Opponent goes for a poison. Like, he's always going to go in for these hogs. First he defends, protects the cannon, just because now that he's protected the cannon, the opponent would have to poison it to get rid of it. And it also means that the opponent is most likely not going to be going for miner in that placement, so it also helps with predicting miners. He just keeps going, keeps applying pressure. Hog in the middle of it all. It's honestly not that like rocket science a matchup. It's just about having good micros. Like, in terms of me explaining stuff, he's not got any particularly special interactions or special placements. that's something you could learn. He does miss one of them, but going for a Firecracker often will help you against dealing with Wall Breakers. Wall Breakers are low-key like kind of a win condition in this matchup. They're not meant to be, but they kind of are, just because there's so much spam that sometimes they get through. Look at this, that hog, just beautiful hog, breaks through, outcycles, GG's. The next matchup that I'm going to be covering is HoggyQ versus RG. Now, the first tip that I want to give you guys is something I mentioned at the start of the video, which is against any kind of giant deck, whether it's Royal Giant, Goblin Giant, or Normal Giant, abuse the hell out of your Mighty Miner. It is so good at dealing with these cards, and often you can make your opponent spend so much elixir, kind of like here. This is a really interesting play. So the opponent goes for a Fisherman to pull away the Mighty Miner, and you can see how instead of going for a cannon, Mo just decides to just go all in, goes guards, decides to take a hit, and just, I mean, he has 2 Firecrackers down in the first 40 seconds of the game, and just apply maximal damage, maximum pressure as well, more than anything. And actually, the thing that's really high level, like an understanding, is it's not even so much about the damage. What he's managed to do is mess up the opponent's cycle. The opponent is just overspent, not overspent elixir, overspent cards, which is why now he's able to go for a hog plus guards, and then he also logs. You see just how crazy aggressive he's going, just to abuse the fact that his opponent has a weird cycle. He goes for a cannon. Now, this is interesting. Cannon is going to be out of cycle, right? The cannon is now out, and it's going to expire and go off the field in a few seconds. So you'd expect the opponent to go Evo RG, and newsflash, that is what he does. But what's really smart is that Mo knows that his opponent wants him to go for a Mighty Miner. See, there was a prediction Fisherman. So instead he just goes for Evo Cracker, Guards, Ice Spirit, Log. He just decides to take a hit. In fact, he takes 2 hits even. But the benefit of this is that now he can counter push. And he's an Evo Cracker, and the opponent, because he just went really aggressive, doesn't have too much elixir. Evo Firecracker gets a beautiful shot on the tower, and I mean, look at that. Clean damage. He's up 700, 800, and he's looking good. So he's now fixed his cycle. The opponent has a good cycle, good enough to go RG in the back, and Mo's going to match it with the Mighty Miner in the back. You do that against most giant decks, any kind of giant deck. Firecracker. Okay, now the opponent is going to get a massive double split lane push, and you can see that he immediately switches lanes. He needs to prioritize defending that left lane. He can take some damage from the RG on the right, but the opponent already has so much damage on the left. A beautiful Evo Cannon killed the Hunter, underrated. I think a lot of people would have missed that. And he has, because he put all his defensive resources on the left side, now he can counter push, and he's probably going to get some damage. Hog gets a hit, Fisherman was too slow, Firecracker gets 2 hits, Firecracker on the right hits the tower, Earthquake, GG's. Just, I mean, there was nothing wrong. I don't think he made a single mistake that game. Maybe at the start. It was like really well played. The next matchup that we're going to be covering is Pig's Lightning. If you guys are an Ultimate Champion, you will be playing this deck a lot. It kind of became meta at the end of the season, so I thought it'd be good to cover it. He does actually end up losing this game, but it's so close, and it's like literally 1 pig hit makes the difference between a win and a loss, so I thought it's still worth including just for you guys to learn how to play the matchup, even if, you know, he did unfortunately lose the game. So, just cycling cards at the start. At this point, I don't think he knows exactly what variation his opponent is running. This still could be the Queen deck. And then the opponent plays the Berserker in the back. The Berserker kind of acts as a tank, even though it's not. So you usually just respond with your own tank, Mighty Miner in the back, Firecracker at the bridge. Goes for an ability. I mean, you can't really let it just stay there. I don't know how the Firecracker missed that shot. It's kind of unfortunate, but you know, he does get now a counter push in the left lane. You kind of have to go opposite lane in this matchup. If you try going same lane, kind of like I said in other lightning matchups, your opponent is just going to lightning cycle you and you will lose. Unfortunately, kind of a rough start. I think the start is really what made Mo lose this matchup, because after this point, you see he just completely outplays him. So he had the Mighty Miner down before, and so he had the recard cycle, manages to outcycle, managed to get breakthrough, get the hog to the tower, and get a ton of damage. Berserker, you cannot let that get to the tower, so he does end up dropping guards on it just to make it not get too much. But you see how he let the Berserker connect and then played it just so he gets a bit more of a counter push from his guards. Opponent's now forced to Ice Spirit, just, you know, make them spend a little bit extra elixir. This is really interesting. He goes for this cannon, and look at that Ice Spirit. I think you guys should rewind and rewatch that Ice Spirit placement as to how he can make the Ice Spirit hit every single one of the pigs. Honestly, I only learned that watching him. If you go for the cannon in the anti-fireball spot, and then you basically play your Ice Spirit directly in the middle of the pigs, it will hit all of them. The second thing that I want to talk about in this matchup is how Mo, I don't think once the entire game goes for an Earthquake onto the opponent's Goblin Hut. The reason is that I think generally it's just too much of an overcommit to be spending. Yeah, opponent lightnings here, and again, there's just a bit of chip damage to that. You wish you wouldn't have to take. But yeah, generally you would rather cycle your log and cycle, because most of the time they're going to go for up high, going for a firecracker. Getting your 3-card cycle down. Look, he's already back to another hog. Gets a hog down. I don't know. Yeah, he does manage actually to get his hog to the tower and protect that Evo Firecracker whilst defending against the opponent, and he actually has a crazy lead. Opponent now goes in, so he goes for a hog in the anti-lightning placement, gets a Firecracker down. Look at the Firecracker placement so that it hits the pigs. Literally this one piggy hit here lost him the game. Like, genuinely, it's crazy. One piggy hit. So, opponent's now also cycling. I don't know how he managed to react fast enough to hit the Ice Spirit and the Firecracker with that log, but he somehow did. Cannon down low. Opponent goes for a lightning. I think there he probably should have gone for his anti-cannon placement. Nice log. Goes in aggressive. And you can already see now that he's got that Mighty Miner, whilst he's finished defending, he just goes really aggressive. Firecracker gets 2 hits. He does have the lead. As you can see, it's basically a balance of knowing you're going to take damage. It is more or less impossible not to take damage, but your goal is to basically take less damage and deal more damage. Opponent gets Evo Firecracker. Here we go. Now he starts the Earthquake cycle. I think it's too little too late, so unfortunately lightning just does so much damage. But you can see here that log, and then the opponent will just lightning the tower. If there was like even a little bit less damage, I'm sure he could have got 2 earthquakes off before the opponent gets to another lightning because of 3-card cycle, but it is a loss. Okay, unfortunately. And finally, the last matchup that I'm going to be covering is Mega Knight Prince. Mo starts off with a hog, finds out, I mean immediately at this point you know that he probably is either playing Mega Knight Prince or Mega Knight Bait off of Bats and Evo Mega Knight. So cannon, and watch this. So you guys should by now know that you can get King Tower, but the tech for him to be able to pull this off, like timing wise, to get the King Tower and also not let the bandit connect to the tower, and then pops the ability, I mean that whole sequence was chef's kiss. That is what we all wish we did in our dreams, but actually pulling that off in a game requires like really high skill. Like the timing of all of that, especially to be able to catch the bandit and not mess up the Mega Knight thing, was really good. So he's outcycled his opponent, or actually, more accurately, his opponent didn't have Elixir. His opponent did have the Evo Mega Knight in cycle, but no Elixir, so that was a really heads-up play just to get a quick 1300 damage. Nice cannon placement, just generally in the middle so that the opponent, he has enough room up high. Yeah, the reason you usually play your troops down low against Mega Knight is just so for the support troops you can keep them kind of at the bridge, so that whilst the Mega Knight is being dealt with by either guards or Mighty Miner, you have like Ice Spirit and you can just do stuff at the bridge. Like if it's a Prince, you can even go for a hog at the bridge and pull it back. It's just better to keep the support troops away from the tower and up higher, and then just isolate the Mega Knight. So this is again a really heads up play. Look at the beautiful Evo cannon. He knew that the opponent would have to not play his Mega Knight. He didn't have Mega Knight in cycle, so Evo Cannon just got loads of damage. Really nice Ice Spirit. Again, I think that's something else you guys can take away from this, is he could have logged, he has log in cycle, but Firecracker basically acts as a log in a lot of matchups. You want to be using your Firecracker to defend wall breakers pretty often. So he goes for an Earthquake, and there's a few reasons why. He doesn't want to waste, like, if he played a cannon, by the time the opponent's troops got to the bridge, the cannon would already be like 80% expired, so there's no point. He goes for it later, goes for a Mighty Miner in the back just to get that 3-card cycle going. Look at that, Ice Spirit just to bait the opponent into thinking he was going to play something else. lets the Mega Knight jump, then goes for guards on the Prince to isolate it. Really important, look at that Ice Spirit on the left. That's a nice interaction I mean, it's been in the game for ages, but I feel like a lot of people don't know that you can get an Ice Spirit to jump on like 5 of the goblins. Gets a nice hog, almost gets damage, but not quite. Gets a Firecracker first just to splash everything. Low Ice Spirit to deal with, mainly for the bats, but also hopefully would have hit the Prince. Uses the bomb just to deal with the Prince so that he can isolate. Now this is interesting. The opponent goes for Wall Breakers, he doesn't even over defend. He just goes straight for a hog, Evo Cannon. Again, that's like keeping track of when the opponent's not going to use their Mega Knight and when they don't have Elixir to use the Queen, because they're both pretty expensive cards. You know that they have to go for either bats or for Goblin Gang, and that's when you can go for Evo Cannon at the bridge. So now it's just spell cycle range, making sure you can defend. Big things are he's constantly cycling his Firecrackers. I mean, again, most decks nowadays seem to be running arrows, so it's important that you do that. And yeah, just really beautiful game. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you sub and like, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.